our final panel session of the day, which is tackling 2023, the big themes for next year, where Andrew Hayward-Wright, the Group Commercial Director for Strategic Partnerships at SeenThis and IB Europe's Programmatic and Sustainability Advisor, will lead a panel of experts as they explore the big themes coming up for the programmatic industry. So over to you, Drew. And again, another final reminder, please do submit any questions you have for our panelists in the Q&A. Over to you, Drew.
Thanks, Nick, and thank you everyone for dialing in and tuning in today. The topic of themes and trends is always my favorite to talk about because we basically get to talk about anything and everything. So it's always a good position to be in. But before we do dive into that, I'm going to just let my panelists quickly introduce themselves, see them on the screen. But I'll start with Sara, if you wanted to quickly introduce yourself.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sara Vincent. I'm the Managing Director for UK and Ireland for Index Exchange. Happy to be here.
Maria?
Hi everyone. I'm Maria Ramiro, representing Huawei, Head of Business Development in Europe.
And Jay?
Hi everyone, I'm Jay Kingsley-Brooks. I'm currently at OneFootball and leading our efforts in Programmatic.
And finally, Zuzanna.
And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Zuzanna Gierlinska. I'm the Managing Director of Xaxis UK. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for taking time to join us today. So before we dive into trends and topics of 2023, I think it's always good to reflect as we're in November now. It feels like the year's well past us. Reflect on what's happened in 2022 to set the scene of the direction that we think we're going to go in. And I think that there's loads and loads of different topics that we can discuss. So we're going to approach this in a little bit of a different way rather than a round robin of questions. We're going to have a general chat, disagree, agree, hopefully more agree than disagree on topics. But Sara, why don't you open us up with what do you think, what's happened in 2022? What are the key highlights and topics that we have achieved and what's to come?
Okay, so I think 2022, it's safe to say, it's been a year of really two halves. That's certainly how we've seen it. I think the industry and to some degree, really the whole of Europe, if not the world. We started off 2022 with a lot of optimism, having coming out of COVID, seeing good growth and like a really bumper Q4. And then I think throughout the course of H1, obviously there was a bigger impact influencing the industry from wide macroeconomic factors. And that has, whilst we don't see the impact immediately, I think during the course of the year, we have definitely seen lots more caution, I think concern within the industry, within society as a whole, as to how we are going to navigate through the situation we're in now. So I think that's been interesting, but obviously that has been a bit of a change across the way that we view the business and like what we should be focusing on. So I think because of that change, the year for us has been, we're working really hard and doubling down on reassurance, stability, closer partnerships. I saw that at the Mexico this year, actually. A lot of the conversations I had with our clients were they want to work with partners where they really existing trust. They can see there's transparency. They have clear understanding of what the roadmap looks like. And I think it's become, in a world that we live in now, I think that preferred partnership and closer partnership has become even more important. So that's been a real key difference that I've seen throughout the year, and obviously something that we're happy to be more involved with. I think in terms of like outside of the macroeconomic and more into the industry, there's obviously been a lot of growth, lots of talk around CTV. And I think that there's some interesting developments there as well, which hopefully we'll talk about in the upcoming panel. We've also seen a big focus around efficiency and how to be, there's a limited amount of supply in the industry, there's demand, and then there is the most efficient pipes and paths to connecting those two sides together. So efficiency and time has become incredibly important from our point of view. I think that's really the key things I'd say. Anyone
want to go next? Absolutely. The preferred, I've seen close partnerships and stuff. Maybe Zuzanna, from your perspective, from the buy side and Xaxis, what are your thoughts?
Certainly, I can build on what Sara said in terms of it's been a year of two halves. I'd actually say it's been quite a roller coaster year. So absolutely, companies had the wind in their sails coming out of Q4. There was strong performance reports posted in H1, but already towards the end of Q2, we saw those macroeconomic impacts that we just touched on starting to take impact. And interestingly, when I was at Cannes, one of the sort of key conversation topics was Q4 and the uncertainty around it. So already from that point, people were unsure. And I would say uncertainty is what I would underline this year. Heading into Q3, so many businesses saw that nosedive, and certainly our industry saw a real sort of pullback. And we saw, from a buy-side perspective, we saw our advertisers really grappling with that sort of short-term market, having to be really agile, responding to changing consumer demand. Q4 saw a massive replanning of budgets, even at the TV level, we've never heard of before. So much short-termism and so much uncertainty. But now that we are in Q4, we're actually seeing a really strong pickup and bounce back. So it's been really up and down. And I think the leaning into programmatic of brands and the ability to use it as a medium, not just to deliver short term or to invest in last minute, but to really use it to test and learn during this uncertain period has been really interesting, and something that we've been supporting brands on that sort of learning agenda. I would also touch, it's been a year of hybrid working coming into its fore. Most companies have got into the groove of what that means for them. At Xaxis, we found the 2-day a week back in the office has really settled people in. Very importantly, though, those 2 days in the office look very different to what people are doing at home. So they're much more about collaborating and engaging and doing team activities. And I've been really pleased to see the way that has settled down and the impact and the benefit that's brought to people. In terms of the trends from this year pulling into next, absolutely measurement metrics that matter is a critical one. I think sustainability, and I know that's something that we're probably going to get deeper into in a moment, but sustainability and how do we move from positive intent this year to actual positive action next year has to be front and center of the agenda. And in terms of more from the platform or product perspective, we've really seen omni-channel come into its fore this year. At Xaxis, we've seen 140% growth in demand for omni-channel, and I absolutely see that continuing into next year.
Before I move on, what do you think has driven the omni-channel shift and engagement?
I think it's been a number of factors. I think certainly the economic uncertainty and demand for effectiveness in budgets, and sometimes having to pull back from individual channels, has given brands an appetite to go for more holistic solutions. I think the simplicity and having a single point of entry across all channels and being able to optimize and drive greater efficiencies because you're optimizing across multiple channels has also been key. I think also the first product we've launched with, from an omnichannel perspective as Xaxis, has been called Unmissable, and that was very much around geo optimization, and that's a data point that goes across all channels very easily and very simply for brands to understand, and it essentially future proofs against the sort of the challenges around cookies. So I think brands have really taken that on board and lent into that as a simple and effective solution.
Absolutely, that makes sense. Jay, maybe your thoughts, because you've obviously recently shifted from the buy side to the sell side. So are you seeing from your brief transition now, the trends of 2022, have they transitioned across the industry?
Yeah, sure. I think it has definitely been a roller coaster, a year of two halves, what both everyone said so far. But the last 12, 18 months that have gone by, it's really been a trend of what I've seen and been essential for brands and publishers to redefine their customer engagement strategies and put that at the heart of what they want to do. And they've really had to put people at the center of what they do and drive forward with purpose, including authentically inclusive marketing, including meeting customers in a cookieless world, and really elevating those hybrid experiences. And I think there's been a real step change. Consumers are not where brands are anymore, so brands need to be more where consumers are. And you touched just now on the omni-channel approach, and I think that's so important in the way that consumers have begun changing their habits, especially their viewing and consumption habits. And we've certainly seen that at OneFootball, and that's why we've developed an ecosystem across web, across app, and across CTV to engage with our consumers whenever they want, wherever they are. And I think that's become increasingly difficult for agencies and brands to achieve a single view of the customer now. Users are less likely to be there, and so an increasing challenge is tying all of those fragmented channels together. So with our viewing habits changing so radically, we're seeing a huge uplift, for example, in our users following match days or live tickers or watching near to live highlights. And this is largely because there's a decline in watching live games, and they're choosing to do it in environments that they can do it in, whether they're out with their friends or whether they're at home or with their families, etc. And fortunately, at OneFootball, we've become obsessed with building audience first upwards and delighting our users at every place. Providing them with joyful information and personalized experiences across our platforms is just so important. And I think just want those experiences and not the brand sell. We all do, right, as individuals. I think we can all admit to that. But we do want to know more about the brands. And when it's wrapped up in a relevant contextual conversation that matters to them personally, that's perhaps adjacent to the relevant content, you move from that equity advertisement to a personalized contextual conversation. So I think it's been a really interesting year in the shift of consumption and habits of consumers, and I certainly have shifted my habits, and I see my friends around me have shifted their habits. I think it's really exciting, but I think with that comes a lot of responsibility, and I think also comes a lot of unprecedented change in tech and environments with measurement and attribution and things like attention, which I'm sure we'll go on to what to expect in the next 18 to 24 months.
Very excellent. I mean, delighting users at every phase to be a catchline for all of us going into 2023. I think that makes sense. And Maria, from your perspective, from how's 2022 shaped up?
Yeah, actually, I couldn't agree more with what I said. For us, I would say it has been 3 key things. And of course, this preparation for a cookie-less environment. So, all about first-party data with, of course, the device manufacturer companies such as Huawei. We have an advanced position there, but also any concerned platform to get user aggregated data and other alternative ways to target users with textual advertising, etc., for sure has been a very hot topic this year that we have been following very closely. There is another thing that we have been, of course, following since the very beginning, that is this high trend of connected devices, and what is more important, the data exchange between these connected devices, right? This brings to us a super exciting opportunity on personalized advertising in all those devices, right? So we know everything about this in TVs, in a smartphone, in tablets, in desktop, of course, in computers, but what about the smartwatch? What about in the audio devices? Well, there's a bunch of devices out there that we are not utilizing yet that maybe in the coming future are very useful for a better advertising, personalized advertising. And we are following this very closely. And then something that you guys already mentioned, and is about this, the fact that we shouldn't reach the user through one single channel or through one single device. Everything is about multi-channel experience and multi-touch, I would say. So how we can use multiple touch points with the user to really engage with them and to retain them. I think everything is about that. We have been testing many different new slots, completely new formats, new slots within, for example, the smartphones in Huawei ads. There is this -1 screen on the phone that is the assistant of the user. The assistant, you can control it by the voice. You have a news feed, you have shortcuts. There are plenty of spaces where advertising can have a place, and it's a very easy and also convenient way to get in touch with the user, right? Or maybe through push notification, maybe through display advertising, that we really need to get into all these new options in the market. I think that has been also the thing that we have been a lot of focus this year.
And that makes sense. Yeah, it seems like a common trend. One of the big ones is omnichannel has come up quite a lot. To your point, obviously, we saw 2021, 2019, it got announced Google Fitbit acquisition, so kind of plays to that extension and growing in that. So, I mean, with that, we look back at 2022. But what do we think is in store for us in 2023? Undoubtedly the topic, and I think it's only fitting, maybe we just start because AdNet Zero is on right now as we speak as well, that we start off with that topic. How strongly is sustainability for each of your own organizations and the industry going to feature, and obviously a subset of that being climate action specifically? Is that going to be a key trend? Are we going to see, I think it was Zuzanna or maybe Sara said, a shift from intention to actual act in 2023? Zuzanna, maybe I'll let you kick off and we can all start commenting.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for our industry to actually make this happen is going to be data, and having data to truly inform the actions that we need to take. So in September, Xaxis carried out a pretty thorough end-to-end review of the top leading DSP partners. And one of the key things that we asked them was their sustainability capabilities in terms of, and specifically being able to pass data back into, we have a Group M carbon calculator that we want to start activating, but we obviously need data to actually fuel that. And it was really interesting to hear that in most part, these companies are at varying stages of being able to collate their own data sources. Across the board, there is still some way to go, even from some of the biggest players in our industry. There are, of course, a handful of companies that are supporting brands look at supply chain emission data. But again, we find that to be very fragmented and only specific to individual channels. But I think the reality for us is we can't wait for perfection. We have to start acting with what is available to us now. In my personal opinion, I really think the focus on carbon offsetting isn't the right one. And instead, we should be acutely focusing on how do we actually cut back carbon emissions. And when I took over the Xaxis team in May this year, I inherited a vision that is driving less ads, but more effective ads. And it's absolutely one I stand by, because I really believe that the way that we can tackle this head on and make an impact is addressing and reducing the volume of ad calls, of unnecessary data collection, of ineffective impressions. And that's really has to be at the front and center of businesses and the strategy as we go forward. And certainly is something that we at Xaxis are very much committed to putting into action this year.
Absolutely, that makes sense. And you mentioned obviously data collection is a big part. If I take it back and pose this question to the group, do we think that the industry as a whole truly understands sustainability and what it means within digital advertising yet? Or is that something that we need to really dive into, unpick, and spend more time on? Sara, do you want to take that bit first?
Thank you. I don't think we fully understand it, but I also, to Zuzanna's point, I don't think we need to have all perfect data, perfect measurement, perfect understanding at this point. Like personally, I think that everybody on the planet has a moral obligation to be more sustainable and consider their impact. And this is much wider than our industry. Obviously, there isn't so much messaging now within advertising that I see on TV, obviously online as well, that there's sustainability messages attributed to many advertisements. So it's raised its profile this year. I think we've got a long way to go, but I also think we've come quite a long way if you think about what this meant to everyone 12 months ago. I remember we were talking about this 12 months ago, and it really wasn't on the agenda. I've sat on a few like board meetings and panels this year where, like to the last part of this year, where the conversation is like, what are the priorities for next year? And sustainability has always fallen within at least the top 3 of that list. So I think there is some cynicism as well, that people are saying they're trying to be more sustainable and we're doing this. Are you actually really bought in? And I think it doesn't, to some degree, that doesn't matter at the moment. For those companies that are talking about it and actually actioning on it, that's fantastic. There's companies that are talking about it, maybe not actioning on it, but their action will come, and this will become much more mainstream, and there will be, like, it will just be built in now to the way that we're running our campaigns, that we have this consideration for sustainability. And again, to Zuzanna's point, offsetting is fine, it's okay if that's what we do right now, but also we have to work towards a reduction, and then we need the data to do that. And from an index point of view, we announced a partnership with Scope 3 earlier in the year, because we're hearing again from more buyers that there is consideration for what can we do towards our sort of green media spend. So with our partnership with Scope 3, we're able to now offer that over to buyers, and we're seeing more and more uptake of those packages. And that's the starting point. So it will grow from there. And then as a business, there's levels of, I don't really know what you call them, but within the whole sustainability, you've got Scope 1, 2, and 3. So 3 is obviously where we are, we've just spoken about. Scope 2 is about the infrastructure and what it takes to run the index business. And so we're working very closely with our data center provider, Equinox, and we know that all of their data centers are now 100% renewable energy, which is a great step. And then within our offices ourselves, like about our offices, how the team gets to work, all of that impact as well. We're looking at that. And I'm quite pleased to say that in our new offices in New York and Toronto, we have LEED certification, which is effectively it's a program that new buildings are buying into, which means the building is very efficient and has less impact on the environment than others. There is many layers to this piece. We can talk about it for a long time, but as I think, let's look at the optimistic side of it. There's much more conversation around it. There is some action. There will be more action. But I don't want to dissuade people from actioning, because we can't measure it and we can't really truly say how impactful that's been.
That makes sense. A shift to action, and perfect is, we don't need perfect, we just need good and going in the right direction. Maria, Jay, anything quickly to add onto the sustainability point before we maybe move on to another?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So just very quickly, in our side, of course, we think technology has a huge responsibility, right, with contributing to a better world. I think there are a bunch of technologies that may influence positively on that. One is, for example, the header bidding on the supplier side, the traffic side, and another one is 5G, of course, and we are very involved on that. We know that 5G will improve all the data exchange and latency and everything regarding that. So I think those two technologies are going to be key.
From our side, I think personally people have been greenwashing for some time, and as we've all rightly said, now it's time to really make a difference. We're investigating it within our business with real intent and how we deliver green media products. From a programmatic perspective, we partnered with OpenX and an SSP, and they have green media buys. They're fully verified by Scope 3, and our sales team are out actively talking to brands and agencies about how we can set up measured and verified carbon neutral PMPs as part of the buy, which is really exciting. And I thoroughly agree with Zuzanna in less ads, but more effective. Love that. Let's champion that.
Brilliant. Less ads, more effective. No, I think that it is good. And the time, as people will see more and more time to act is now. What I'm going to do is, I think there's so many different things that we could talk about. Obviously, one of the elephants in the room for us in going into 2023 is the deprecation of the third-party cookie and shifting of the goalpost. But what I want to tie into this as well is a notion of disruption in our industry, because obviously that itself and sustainability and that topic as well brings around the opportunity for disruption. And are there certain areas and focuses and opportunities that we think that could be disrupted because of these trends and changes within our industry in 2023? Maria, did you want to start on that one?
Yeah, that's a pretty wide question, right? So of course, everything regarding data has been, for example, for us, for Huawei, has been the key selling point that has drove per 9 times client growth, for example, only in this year. So we are facing incredible numbers there. But besides this, and besides, let's say, another innovation that I've heard in the market, such as CTV, for example, I do really think that users demand new experiences in the devices they are using every day, in the channels they are using every day in their digital life, right? And this affects to how do they receive advertising impacts. And I'm talking about, for example, using the audio speakers to search for shopping, or using the camera of the phone to scan any article and buy it directly in any of the stores that it may appear as an option. And these include technologies, image recognition and augmented reality, virtual reality, of course. And I think more and more we'll hear about it, right? And all these different smart spaces that we see today, where the user is interacting with so many things, will create not only a new data bunch that we need to know how to use it, but also a completely new experiences. I'm not talking about the metaverse and so on, that we don't really need to get into that to know that we are in front of a new world and new possible experiences that may affect how the advertising industry is going to evolve in the future.
I'll throw one in there, and it's obviously absolutely critical and has been such a accelerant in the adoption of digital from the outset, which has been the ability to measure it. And attention has certainly become the darling of post-cookie measurement, but is that genuinely the right way for us to go? And what metrics will we be looking at heading into next year? And really for us, what we're starting to see and hear from brands is they want metrics that matter, metrics that go beyond just justification of that specific media component, and actually how can that be linked to real business outcomes. So I think there is a lot to be done on the measurement front still. I think attention has a long way to go in terms of us really harnessing attention and being able to drive that to impact business outcomes. Again, it's got to go beyond just applying it against the media metrics, is our tendency to do so as an industry.
Yeah, I think attention is such a growing conversation and has got a long way to go. Some brands it's been a real discussion point this year and will continue to be so next year. Of course, viewability is just the proxy for attention, and there's so many other factors that needed to be included in it, such as creative, placement, etc. But one of the things I think that really helps with attention is contextual. And you see some of the work that Lumen has done with various partners in the space, and contextual targeting, the attention score has often outperformed, in most cases, other digital partners or channels. And we've certainly seen this in our environments and in our ecosystem as well. And I think going back to the disruption question that you posted, I think contextual will play a bigger role as we move forward. Again, there's a need for a taxonomy of measurement within contextual. But I think as we start to understand the value of the signals that are driven in this space from contextual, it will deepen and play a bigger role in the widely used adoption. We know that contextual is currently underused in programmatic, sadly, but I think over time that will change, because we know the user has a clear intent, signal of intent of being there in the place at the time, and brands can have adjacency and get close to that content that matters for them, and the brands can become part of that conversation in a really authentic way. And we've worked with several of our partners at OneFootball on roadmaps together to analyze that full funnel approach and not just concentrate on that last click. And we've seen some really highly effective results across our platforms, where we are reacting not only to daily contextual insights that we see to deliver immediate results, but also making use of those longitudinal brand studies to make sure that we're being highly effective at driving brand intent and saliency. So I think contextual will be a real disruptor into the year coming.
Yeah, I just say I agree with that. I think like this time last year, again, we were talking about trends for 22, and it was, I guess, the real drive was understand the value of first-party data, collate it, get it consented, and then you're in a good space, and that's for everyone across the ecosystem. This year, it's very much now test, and if contextual continues to grow along with other solutions, it might even be by the time Google actually deprecates third-party cookie that it's going to be a non-event, because already a lot of spend has moved across to alternative supply paths where actually the incrementality is better. So yeah, I'm 100% on that one.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think we're at time, but I always like to finish these off with a real quick speed round. One thing that you want to see happen in 2023, and we'll start with Sara as you just finished. We'll do 10 seconds each. What is it, the number one thing you'd love to see?
One thing it's already started, but I'd love to see more of this and actually an output from it, which is greater collaboration between parties within the ecosystem, recognizing who the real competitor is. It's not who you think it is. So get together, collaborate, and the really measurement we've talked about today. It's super important across every channel we work in today, and also every emerging channel. But the fact that we recognize that what we have in the past, and we're not trying to force it into the new world, like some of the metrics just don't make sense in CTV that we see in digital. I think collaboration around actually coming up with some solutions to measurement would be amazing to see next year.
Excellent. Maria?
All right, I will try to say something at least different, as I'm sitting in a company that majority of the investment goes to innovation, right? There's one thing that we are following very closely that is happening in China, and is the connected cars, right? So all these smart spaces that I mentioned, so a smart home, but especially a smart car. So whether the cars are connected with a specific software and digital services and can serve a bunch of content from this digital ecosystem, is something that we are also exploring on advertising, from advertising perspective, right? So probably not fully happening next year, but at least I will be expecting to see some pilots. Yeah.
Connected cars, brilliant. And Zuzanna?
Again, picking something different. I would say I'm a glass half full kind of person. And whilst the IAB Europe has written down the growth of digital quite significantly, actually, for next year, I'm hopeful that we will actually counter that write down and we will see a stronger year off the back of what is proving so far to be a pretty buoyant Q4.
And Jade, to wrap things up. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Fingers crossed. I think there is an unprecedented amount of complexity for everyone that needs to be navigated currently. The role of agencies has never been more important for brands, and the role of publishers to get closer to all of their partners and brands has never been more important to help build roadmaps and deliver on their objectives. I would love to see the coming future to create a more transparent, holistic ecosystem that connects buyers, sellers, publishers, data platforms, ad fraud, all in a single place.
Brilliant, excellent. Thank you so much all for your time. There you have it. So collaboration, more connected devices, in particular cars, stronger growth, fingers crossed, transparent. We also saw this year a rise in hybrid working, more learnings from the brand around programmatic. So a lot happening in 2022, and it feels like to me a positive outlook for 2023, but let's stay tuned. So with that, thank you all. Thank you everyone for listening. I'll hand back to Nick.